Heya Cryptozens, welcome back to the Crypto Overnighter. My name is Nikodemus and we do crypto news analysis nightly at 10 p.m. And keep in mind, none of this should be considered financial advice. And it's Tuesday, February 28th, 2023. And on Monday, February 27th, we found out that the Securities Exchange Commission subpoenaed Robinhood. And while we know the SEC's investigation is related to Robinhood's cryptocurrency offering, the specific details are not known at this time. Now, Robinhood began offering Ethereum and Bitcoin trading all the way back in 2018, and its commission-free digital asset trading includes a broad range of tokens. Their trading volume decreased significantly during the crypto winter of 2022. That said, during the January rally, they saw a significant increase in volume. Now, this is not their first time. Robinhood has been down this road with the SEC before. In late 2020, the commission accused Robinhood of misleading its customers about its revenue sources and failing to fulfill its duty of best execution. Now, the duty of best execution requires a broker-dealer to execute customers' trades at the most favorable times reasonably available under the circumstances. Robinhood has agreed to settle at the time, paying a total of $65 million. Now, Gary Gensler has gone from being a potential friend and savior of crypto to being its arch nemesis. The agency's actions have received well-deserved criticism from both inside and outside the industry. Representative Tom Emmer called it a shakedown authority at one point. However, a document published in January revealed that the White House is satisfied with the SEC's handling of the crypto industry. So, however you feel about that one. Sir John Cunliffe had some words about DLT today. Now, he's a senior official at the Bank of England, and he doesn't seem too impressed with distributed ledger technology. He thinks it's too clunky and too underpowered to handle a central bank digital currency. He was speaking at the House of Commons Treasury Committee on the subject of a digital pound. Now, he's on board with a digital pound, but the Deputy Governor for Financial Stability says it's now, quote, more likely than not that a digital pound will be needed. So the Bank of England is reportedly watching the trends in economics, payments, and technology to see how things are going to shake out before getting too involved in the creation of a central bank digital currency. And he was talking about the idea that payments could be more tightly integrated to online activities. He did pour some cold water on claims made by Anne-Marie Morris. Now, it's her position that a CDBC, and she's specifically talking about a retail CDBC, so the version for ordinary consumers. She thinks that those CDBCs should be built on distributed ledger technology, which, fine. I think we're going to have to accept the reality of some level of central bank digital currency, at least here in the US. If we, the people, are going to have a CDBC inflicted on us, foisted on us without our input or consent, at least build it on something valuable. If you're going to make me use a CBDC, at least make it immutable. If you're going to control it, at least let me audit it. Now, Cunliffe doesn't think that's going to work. He said, quote, distributed ledger technology suffers some real challenges on scalability. On the retail side of it, we put in 30,000 transactions per second as a base case, going to 100,000. I don't think you can find any distributed ledger technology that gets remotely close to that. Now, he went on to say that he's not saying they will never reach that point, just that it's not there now. He added, but to move to the next stage, which would be to build a working prototype to test in a simulated environment, and then you'd be testing in a live environment, then implementation. This next phase is designed to put us in a position to do that. So that next phase he's talking about? In the next phase, the Bank of England is going to be testing their digital pound with private sector participants. And that's all going to depend. Design will depend on the purpose of their central bank digital currency. We already know that it's meant for retail usage. That's going to influence the design and implementation, because he said they don't want a situation where the currency has become a savings product instead. He ended up comparing the digital pound to Apple Pay money, and he specifically mentioned micropayments as a use case for a digital pound. And that's an important point, because if transaction fees are exorbitant, people aren't going to want to use it. We can see that in crypto already. I personally felt that. During the bull run, I had a decision to make whether to pay $50 in Ether on a $30 item. You can't have that with people's main source of money usage. Now, credit card fees are a perfect example. In some cases, those fees are pretty obscene, but that's all user choice. You can choose not to use a credit card. It's much harder to avoid using the coin of the realm, and if that coin is digital, well, there you are. And Cunliffe is not ruling out the usefulness of DLT completely. One of the use cases that he talked about was real estate. He said, quote, "We're running projects with the BIS, Bank of International Settlements, Innovation Hub, about a synchronization agent that will be able to synchronize not just with the financial sector, but with the land registry." Now, that's in reference to Project Meridian. Project Meridian is working on an intermediary platform that uses money directly from the central bank, which sounds similar to me to kind of like FedNow, because that's going to act as a financial intermediary promising immediate settlements for the U.S. government. And the land registry he was talking about is a UK agency. They record who owns what real estate. Now, Cunliffe said that their experimentation shows that tokenized assets can be used to purchase a house without escrow or lawyers. He called them solicitors, but it's the same thing. So here's the deal. It's really difficult to make the case that DLT can't be used to run a CBDC when it's already used to run a CBDC. The e-Naira is a fiat currency that runs on blockchain technology, which makes me wonder why Cunliffe says it won't work, since it's already been proven that it will. Now, across the channel, the French National Assembly has approved a new set of regulations for cryptocurrency firms that operate in France. These regulations are part of a larger bill that aims to align French laws with those of the European Union. In the final vote, 109 Assembly members voted in favor of the regulations, while 71 voted against. This bill has already been passed by the French Senate, and now it will be sent to the French President for final approval. He has 15 days to approve the bill or send it back to the legislature, although it's expected to become law. After pressure from the industry, French policymakers have made the regulations for cryptocurrency firms less strict than originally proposed. The regulations are part of a wider regulatory push that began after the collapse of FTX. Under these new rules, French companies that provide cryptocurrency services must register with the Financial Markets Authority, and this is going to be at a higher level than before. Their goal is to align with the markets in crypto assets legislation that the European Parliament is expected to pass in April. This move will essentially bring French-registered firms into compliance with the anticipated EU law before it becomes mandatory. Starting in July 2023, companies that want to register with the Financial Markets Authority for cryptocurrency services will need to complete a more comprehensive registration process. However, companies that are already registered can continue operating under their current registration. That is until the end of the transition period, which will likely be in 2026. Anne-Sophie Kissy is the head of the legal and compliance at the French crypto service company Flowdesk. According to her, the new regulations are a step forward, but not a big one. And it's not intended to be. It's intended to serve as a bridge to the markets and crypto assets legislation. She says crypto companies should start preparing for it. The proposed regulations would establish higher regulatory standards for crypto service providers in areas such as governance, segregation of funds, and reporting to regulators. Firms would also be required to disclose risks and implement policies to prevent conflicts of interest. Many of these provisions are similar to those in the EU's regulatory framework, which is expected to be passed soon by the European Parliament. However, the new French regulations would take effect much earlier than MiCA because MiCA isn't due to take into effect until over a year after its final vote. According to Faustine Fleuret, head of the French crypto lobbying group ADAN, it's important for crypto companies to comply with measures that enhance customer protection. However, she's concerned that these new requirements will set too high of a bar for smaller firms. She's concerned that this will put them at a disadvantage compared to companies in other countries. Fleuret expressed concern that smaller companies will not be able to launch their businesses due to the new regulations. If true, this means France may miss out on innovation. Now, Kissy stated that complying with French regulations may be more difficult for smaller projects, and this difficulty could lead to fears that fresh startups will leave Europe. These fears are not entirely unjustified. As it stands, the current provisions are a compromise between policymakers and the crypto industry, and as such, they're much milder than the original proposal. The amendment proposed by Senator Hervé Maret in December required French crypto companies to maintain a license from the AMF, which they had never done before. This proposal was made in response to the FTX implosion in November. That led to a push to regulate crypto. Now, frankly, I am not a fan of these knee-jerk reactions in terms of regulatory response. Now, Senator Maret wrote in the amendment text that the bankruptcy of FTX highlighted the risks of investing in crypto assets, especially when a company operates outside regulation. The amendment proposed that a high-tier license, which is currently optional for crypto firms, that would become mandatory by October 1st, 2023. However, following pressure from the crypto industry, Senator Daniel Labaron proposed a more attainable registration process and a later deadline of 2024. At the time of the senator's proposal, Faustine Fleuret stated that the proposals were a positive step to protect investors and preserve innovation and business creation in France. According to Grayscale's legal team, the company plans to argue in court next week that the Securities Exchange Commission treated their plans unfairly. Specifically, its bid to establish a Bitcoin exchange-traded fund. The SEC denied Grayscale's application to convert the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust into a spot Bitcoin ETF in June. This prompted Grayscale to take legal action. The case will take place on March 7th, and Grayscale's team will argue that the regulators' actions were illogical because the SEC rejected their bid despite having approved several futures ETFs with similar risk profiles. Donald B. Verrilli Jr. is the former U.S. Solicitor General who's helping Grayscale with their legal challenge. During a press conference on Tuesday, he said that the SEC doesn't have a blank check. He explained that Grayscale's case is a classic example of treating like cases differently. The SEC said it rejected Grayscale's Bitcoin ETF because it was concerned about market manipulation and the lack of a surveillance sharing agreement between a regulated market and a regulated exchange. This concern was also cited by the SEC in their rejection of similar spot Bitcoin applications from Grayscale and other companies. Verrilli pointed out that there are already several approved futures ETFs currently functioning. He said that those ETFs also rely on spot market ties and that they were considered sufficient. While recent industry issues and controversies may be a topic of discussion, he believes that they won't become a direct element in next week's arguments. Verrilli noted that this particular panel of 3 judges will focus on the specifics of the case and that the more specific they get, the stronger his case becomes. Michael Sonnenschein is Grayscale's CEO, and he said that the ETF option is not viable. If that's true, then the company is considering breaking up the trust. The chief legal officer, Craig Salm, believes that the case will have significant implications on the Bitcoin market. However, if Grayscale loses, they will pursue all appeals, even if that means taking their case to the Supreme Court. On Tuesday, the Bank for International Settlements released a report saying that banks worldwide have reduced their exposure to certain cryptocurrencies by 43.6% over the last year. The BIS Basel Committee on Banking Supervision, or BCBS, their report showed that the total exposure to cryptocurrencies, whether directly or through derivatives, dropped from 61.7% in 2021 to 15.4% in 2022. That's a huge decline that was mostly due to the fewer banks participating in the survey. That said, other factors, such as market conditions and banks' efforts to comply with global regulations, also played a role. The number of banks involved in the survey decreased from 182 to 126. The collapse of several major companies like Celsius Network and FTX have led to millions of dollars being wiped out in the market in just 1 year. Additionally, regulators have tightened their oversight, leading to a reduction in crypto activity. The BCBS, which establishes global banking regulations, endorsed new rules in December that limit a bank's exposure to no more than 2%. In June of that same year, the committee also suggested that crypto holdings should be capped. Now, banks are already taking steps to comply with the banking regulations proposed by BCBS, even though they have until 2025 to implement them. The report revealed that the total exposure to cryptocurrencies has significantly decreased. In the Basel III monitoring exercise, the share of crypto exposure reduced to just 0.003% and 0.001% of total exposures, respectively. On March 13th, around noon Eastern Standard Time, Coinbase will stop trading Binance USD. The decision was made after Coinbase's most recent evaluation of the stablecoin. Now, Paxos has already stopped issuing BUSD due to an order from the New York Department of Financial Services. According to a Coinbase spokesperson, this suspension is as a result of their internal review process. After assessing BUSD, Coinbase found that it no longer met their listing standards. That led to a decision to suspend trading. So, theoretically, it has nothing to do with Binance itself. But as we talked about last night, it seems like the SEC is going after Binance, not Paxos, not stablecoins in general. As Binance is not a US-based company, the SEC is somewhat limited in what it can do. Screwing around with their private stablecoin might be a part of the SEC's greater plans. While customers will still have access to and can withdraw BUSD funds, Coinbase will suspend trading of the stablecoin on several of its platforms. This includes Coinbase.com, Coinbase Pro, Coinbase Exchange, and Coinbase Prime. Earlier this month, Paxos, the issuer of BUSD, received a Wells notice from the SEC, which claimed that the stablecoin was listed as an unregistered security. Even though Paxos disagrees with this decision, as we reported last night, it has cut ties with Binance and is in discussions with the SEC. And that's going to do it for us tonight. I want to thank you, my listeners, because when you stop listening, I will stop talking. If you enjoyed tonight's show, then please like, follow, subscribe. Maybe leave a rating or review. And in the meantime, we'll see you tomorrow night.